Welcome back to Brandon's World, sponsored by Voltage Live, as our interview month in March continues with friend of the show, Cleveland sports fan aficionado. And at the time of this airing, he will be a newly married man, Andy Z, ladies and gentlemen.
What's going on, Brandon? Thank you for the kind intro. I appreciate it.
Dude, I'm really excited to have you on. I've told you before, you are, I believe, an aficionado, as I said in the intro, about all things sports, and obviously your niche is Cleveland, but I feel like me and you, for the most part, we have sort of the similar way of thinking
Yeah,
in most sports. So let's dive into the whole NFL free agency, which for the last few years I've been kind of coined as like the real March Madness. Uh,
yeah.
because it happens every year and we get more crazy stuff every year. So, you know, one of the biggest storylines this year is obviously like the quarterback movement, right? We don't know at this time of the recording where Aaron Rodgers is going, though Pittsburgh is heavily somewhat favored. Sounds like Minnesota may be in the running. You got Geno Smith going to Vegas, which we'll get into. Obviously, Daniel Jones going to Indianapolis, Justin Fields going to the Jets. The one, and I kept saying this, Andy, like I didn't understand Seattle paying Sam Darnold $33.5 million a year for what I think is pretty much a younger version of Geno Smith.
I think that's why they did it though, because he's a younger version. I mean, it looked like definitely the Seahawks were trying to refresh themselves. Obviously, let DK go. Brought in a new younger quarterback that had a chance last year to prove himself. And I think, Gino kind of was a journeyman for a very long time and found a home in Seattle, and that set him up to go to Vegas. But was he going to be their long-term answer? I don't know. I think he's landing in a good spot in Vegas, especially depending on what they do in the draft. If they take a quarterback, Gino would be a fantastic guy to mentor a young quarterback because he's been around the league more than probably anybody in the NFL right now.
Yeah, with the Darnold thing though, my takeaway was like you said, Geno's not going to move the needle. I don't think Darnold's going to move the needle either. Though, I said this, I do really like the addition of Cooper Kupp. I thought that was a great signing by
Yes,
them,
I agree.
especially after they let DK Metcalf go. But I'm looking at Sam Darnold, and I was never a Darnold fan when he came out of USC. I thought he had a really awkward delivery. He turned the football over a lot, which to me, if you turn the football over a lot in college, you're going to turn the football over a lot in the NFL. Um, I thought last year, I thought he was set up to succeed in Minnesota because they had the offensive coach, they had the weapons, they had the offensive line. And I'm looking at Seattle going, and I know Quinn Kubiak is their new offensive coordinator, but he's got a defensive head coach, he's got a bad offensive line, and until the Cooper Kupp signing, you know, um, JSN is a really good receiver. Kenneth Walker's a really good back, but he gets hurt. And in my opinion, I know the NFC North was, by far probably the best offensive division in football. San Francisco's defense, I think, with Robert Saleh, even though they lost a lot of pieces, I think just Saleh being a DC there is going to be better. We know what the Rams do on defense. We know Jonathan Gannon in Arizona is a defensive mind. So, like, I don't know. And also, he's in a rainy city compared to a dome in Minnesota. I just don't get the fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think going into the offseason, I thought he was going to be the biggest coin flip. There was a little bit of buzz. Oh, should the Browns go after Darnold? Should they go get Darnold? And in my mind, I kind of feel the same way about Rodgers. It's like I'm not scared of a guy like Darnold, and I also don't necessarily want to go all in to get a guy like Darnold. I think if it works out, it'll work out. But if it doesn't, it's like it's not going to be a surprise if it doesn't work out with Darnold in Seattle, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. In Minnesota, what better situation could you be in than having Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, a good O line in a dome with a good defense, a good offensive coordinator, a good offensive coach? And it's like he had all the pieces there to succeed, which I guess a big question will be, will JJ McCarthy succeed? Because if Darnold can succeed, then I don't see, I don't know. Check down God JJ should be able to do okay.
Here's my thing, right? If JJ McCarthy doesn't work in Minnesota, he's not gonna work. And
No,
I
he
look at
won't work
that
anyway.
And I look at that NFC North now. I mean, obviously the Lions. Now the Lions did lose both their coordinators, which I think is a bigger deal than what people are going to make it out to be. But their roster is still
It's so
insanely
good.
talented. You've
So, and their
got
head coach.
You've got Minnesota, who's got a wizard as a head coach. Those weapons, what we think will be probably a stable quarterback situation, whoever the quarterback will be, whether it is
Right.
McCarthy, whether they go after Aaron Rodgers. I love what the Bears did this offseason. I mean, they completely said, we're going to invest in our interior of the offensive line. They
Yep.
remade it overnight. And Green Bay to me, it's almost like I like Jordan Love, but at the end of last year, like they just sort of felt like a little bit of a dead offense. Like I don't know. I've been flirting with this take of like, is there a world where the Packers are the worst team in that division?
I think they're bottom two for sure. I mean, obviously Minnesota and Detroit are the top two teams in that division. And depending on, I mean, Caleb has every weapon in the world now. He has a good receiving core. He has a good offensive line. He has himself. I mean, we know he's a good quarterback with unlimited talent. So I think last year I remember thinking Green Bay is a good team. They were solid all around the ball, but they weren't a team that you'd be scared to face in the playoffs. If you were going into the NFC playoff race, the team you wanted to face was probably Green Bay.
Yeah. And
Um,
for my Philadelphia Eagles, who, by the way, for the record, are the defending Super Bowl 59 world freaking champions.
yes, sir, they are good,
Uh,
good game. Congratulations, they beat the piss out of those Chiefs.
Andy, I don't know if you know this, but from now till the start of next season, every brand's row officially starts with the Fly Eagles Fly fight song.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
this is the first time that I have been privileged to be on the air to call myself a world champion. This show started um 7 months after Super Bowl 52. So defending our championship that year, I was on the air that fall.
yeah. I mean, you have every right to call yourself a world champion. You guys beat the best team. You guys beat one of the greatest dynasties. I think probably the Patriots with Brady were the greatest dynasty, and then I think after that, the Chiefs are a very close second.
Yeah. And obviously
The
just back on the Green Bay thing, we beat them in the first round. So,
oh, you smacked them, yeah.
um, y- y- you know, let me throw this out there. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers, and the rumor out there is he's waiting for Minnesota. Minnesota doesn't know what to do. I think we all agree out of the three teams that are rumored for him, that's probably the best situation. So I'm going to take that out. I have been saying to people, and you may think I'm nuts, if you put down the Giants and you put down the Steelers, I actually think roster construction wise and what Aaron Rodgers needs, I can make a case the Giants are a better fit.
I don't know. It's still the Giants.
I know, and everybody
You
says
talking
that,
between you
but
talking between Pittsburgh,
between
New
Pittsburgh and the
York.
Giants, because let me
Oh,
break it
okay.
down. Let me say this. What is the Giants' strength on their team? It's the defensive line, which they have arguably with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. They have one of the best defensive lines in football, and they have a very good offensive line. They have Malik Neighbors, who's a very talented wide receiver. I think he's a top, what, 6, 7, 8 receiver in the league right
Yeah.
now. And you give me Brian Dable, who I do like as an offensive coach. I mean, he got Daniel Jones to the playoffs. And I think Pittsburgh is so rigid in defensive culture. And yes, they got DK Metcalf, but their old culture is we're going to run the ball. We're going to play defense. We're going to go 9-8 and get bull rushed in the first round.
We're
And
gonna
I
win our
oh
game. We're gonna win a game 10-6. That's the average score of
yeah,
a Steelers football
and
game.
and I also think like you can make the argument, and the NFC has gotten better. We'll see what Michael Penix does this year in Atlanta. We talked about the NFC North. We'll see if like a San Francisco is able to bounce back from their injuries a year ago. But I think you could make a case like you would have a better shot making the back half of a wild card shot in the NFC than the AFC.
Well, the AFC is clearly the better division in football.
Yeah.
I mean, you have three of the top four quarterbacks, I think, are in the AFC, and
Yeah.
Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes, right? Those are
Yep.
probably the top three, I'd say, right? Am I missing someone? Jalen,
Lamar,
but
Allen, Mahomes,
then you have
and
Jaden and Jalen.
in the NFC, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
just AFC wise, you've
I mean,
got
those are three perennial MVP
Burrow as
candidates.
well.
Burrow. Yeah, I forgot about Burrow. And that's four guys that are MVP candidates every
Yeah,
year, probably, right?
yeah. And
Um,
it does sound like for the record that Cincinnati is going to pay JaMarr Chase and T. Higgins, which I would absolutely do. We've
mhm.
seen, I think my Philadelphia Eagles have sort of set the precedent, which is you pay your quarterback, you pay your offensive line, you pay your receivers, and you draft defensive players. Because I always think defense is easier for for rookies to come in and transition anyway.
Right. I mean, how many failed O linemen have we seen coming into the NFL versus D linemen?
Um,
It's
I
it's
I would say off defensive line talent you can generally get right second, third, fourth round.
right,
The majority outside of center, and you can find guards in later rounds. If we're talking specific tackles, there are not a lot of left and right tackles that aren't first round picks.
right. That's the issue we've seen with Cleveland for so long is can't find that Joe Thomas replacement. Um, but
And
I'm going back to the Rodgers. I
go ahead.
think if I'm a Pittsburgh fan, do I want Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. I mean, I think Pittsburgh has bigger issues in their house than finding a quarterback. I think if I was a Steelers fan, I would want Tomlin gone
Oh,
because
I
I
was
know
saying it
Tomlin.
since the end of last year,
Me
and
too.
I called it. I mean, I don't even remember the conversation. I don't remember if it was with you, but I know I had it with other people on the show where I called it in July. I was literally like, they're going to start 6-3 or 7-2 and finish 9-8 or 10-7.
Yeah, and then get bounced in the first round
Yeah.
every year. Same thing
And oh, the standard is the standard. Well, was the standard really being exited in the first round?
every year, first or second. But they do get to celebrate their playoff victory, or they're making the playoffs for.
They're 9-8. We've never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, well, he's never won a Super Bowl except for the what 1 year with Ben Roethlisberger when he took
Yeah.
over a roster that wasn't his.
So okay, we're talking AFC North, so we might as well jump into it. Um, Myles Garrett. Um, I did not like the decision to pay him $40 million, and I will say this up front. I don't think any position in the NFL, even JaMarr Chase, a wide receiver, I don't think anybody's worth $40 million outside of the quarterback position.
I
Um,
agree.
I think that paying Myles Garrett, I know the fan base is like, oh, good. Miles is saying, no, that this is a waste of time. And my biggest takeaway is, in my opinion, you're not paying Myles Garrett 40 million if you're not drafting a quarterback number two.
100%. I think it's weird though because time and time again, the Browns prove us wrong with this mythical cap, right? We signed Watson, and everybody said the Browns are never going to be able to field a roster again. And it's like, well, every year they figure out some way to move money around and find more money and spend more money. I mean, let's be real. The Haslams have been one of the better owners in Cleveland sports when it comes to spending money, right? They spend their money compared to
Yeah,
the
I mean,
Dolans.
you
They
you
don't
could
spend a
make a
dime.
you could make a case, and as much as I had beef with Dan Gilbert back in the day, and
Yeah,
I was even blocked by him on Twitter like 10 years ago on my old account, you could make a case that for at least that championship, the 4-year run, Dan did spend money.
yeah, and he is right now too with Donovan, and he's going to pay Mobley. He'll probably pay Allen. He'll probably play Garland. But talking about the Haslams, they've been fantastic when it's come to spending money. We can't even bat an eye at that, right? But time and time again, Andrew Berry has proved that no matter how much you spend, you can always find more money in the NFL. They do it every single year. Even under this 4 year, 3 or 4 year Watson stretch, we've still had the most cap space in the NFL or top five, right? And somehow they
Yeah.
make it work. So I don't think spending the money on Garrett is that big of a deal unless you were able to spend that money on two or three other positions. But who, what two or three top level players were the Browns going to sign for the sum of $40 million? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, if
And
it if it was me personally, I would have rather traded him, got two first, got a player back, and moved on. And
yeah, if that was
like
the alternative, if we could have found a package where we got a first this year and a first next year and a
yes.
second this year and a second next year, sure.
And I would have picked Abdul Carter number two and sort of reset that contract and build that roster. Because my whole thing is, I kind of feel like Tennessee's walked in at number one with Cam Ward, and I don't buy the rumors that they're going to trade that pick. I just don't see them having Will Levis as their quarterback again next year. So to me, like the draft started to two, and reading the tea leaves, like I texted you last week, to me, it's pretty much welcome Sheduer Sanders to Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a mock draft right now, and they still have Carter going too. But the Browns have a quarterback on the roster right now. Cool, we have Kenny Pickett, but are we running with Kenny Pickett this year? Is that
And
uh,
and and for the record, Atlanta just guaranteed Kirk Cousins $10 million for being on the roster. So unless somebody gets hurt around the week, it sounds like he's going to be back in Atlanta to back up Penix.
yeah? I can't
And
believe that he didn't demand out of there and
and
they didn't figure that out.
and Russell Wilson to me would not fit Stefanski's system either if they decided to bring him in.
No,
You,
I don't
you
want to
know,
deal with that. I don't want to deal with another veteran coming in. I mean, I I've seen so much Sanders tape now over the last couple weeks after the Miles signing, and it's like the dude puts up good film. And being a Browns fan, Cleveland has always been a place that gets mocked for why would players want to go there? Why would anybody want to go there? It's Cleveland, it's the Browns. Nobody wants to, and we see what Sanders is doing on his own social media, pushing the narrative that he wants to be in Cleveland. I mean, 2 days ago, we posted a video of Travis Bazana on his
yeah.
story. He's walking around New York with a Browns hat on his backpack. He's posting. I mean, if if you find a guy like Sanders, a guy who is a top QB in a draft, right? He's number two in this draft. I think most people have him there on his board, on their board. And you see a guy like that who has a lot of swag, who has gifted ability, who has an extremely athletic family. I think if he wants to come here and you like some of what you see, why not, right? Because if it fails, whatever. If it fails, whatever. It's still we go back to where we were.
So this is the only other alternative I've proposed is I think that you could make a case. Obviously, we talked about Las Vegas signing Geno Smith. And what we both talked about, I think he's going to be a bridge. I think Vegas still needs to find their quarterback of the future. They're in a division with Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton in their own division. Um, I think you can make a case because I don't think the Giants would move back. I don't think New England's taking a quarterback. Jacksonville's not taking a quarterback. So to me, if I'm Vegas, I would make the call to the Browns at two. And if I'm the Browns, depending on what I would get back, if you're not in love with Sanders, whatever your evaluation would be, I think you can make a case. Let's move back from two to six, pick up extra picks, take the best offensive lineman on the board, and start building your actual roster. And then at some point, insert the quarterback, whether you're tanking for Arch Manning or you try for a free agent next year.
Yeah, if you can drop down to six and get Vegas's pick next year, because they're not going to be good again, right? We know
Yeah.
they're not. They're probably going to have a top 10
I
pick
don't know
again.
if you would get their first next year, maybe like a second next year and an extra third this year.
That wouldn't be enough for me to move back from two. I don't think.
Okay,
I
that's
don't.
interesting because I feel like it would be for me because I think this roster needs a complete offensive line rebuild, especially of both tackles. I think it needs another edge rusher that, is a free agent caliber or a lower level player that you can put outside of Garrett. I think you need another corner or two. Like, to me, there are holes on this roster that I'm like, I can fill if I get extra picks.
Would you, say Sanders wasn't on the board? Would you take Carter or Hunter at two?
Okay, so this is where I wanted to get into because you asked about Travis Hunter. I have what probably is considered the hot take, but I think Travis Hunter is a defensive back in the NFL, and I don't think defensive backs are worth top five picks.
I agree with that.
So
Um,
I think
well,
wherever,
I
here's
just,
what
I
I
don't,
think.
you don't
I
think
think
he can be a receiver?
I think wherever Travis Hunter goes, he will be overdrafted. That's how I feel. If he is a receiver, I don't think he's going to be a game-changing receiver. I kind of view him as more of a corner and like a wildcat slot receiver package kind of guy. Like,
Yeah,
and that's kind of how I feel because they're talking like New England could take him at 4, Jacksonville could take him at 5, and I don't know that like to me if Travis Hunter, the way I view it is like he's being viewed as a really good player because this is a really weak draft. I think in a good draft, he's probably like a mid-round pick because it's a bad draft and because of where teams are drafting and what they need, he's going to be overdrafted. It's kind of how I feel.
right. Yeah, I mean, he did make some crazy plays at Colorado, but again, he was playing at Colorado. He wasn't in the SEC or Big Ten. Let's
And,
also
and
remember
he
that.
doesn't have the biggest body for a wide
No,
receiver. Like, my issue is like if he's going to be a receiver, for him to go that high, I needed to beat Justin Jefferson, JaMarr Chase, Malik
right.
Neighbors. To me, he's a slot receiver.
Yeah, he's definitely not on the corner. I mean,
Yeah,
he's not an outside receiver. He's not as
yeah,
big as he needs to be.
yeah.
He is incredibly fast and has incredibly good hands, and he can control his body like a freak. But I don't know. It's
If I'm a GM, this may be a hot take. If I'm the GM, he's just off my board because if I'm picking in the top five, because I don't think he's worth that value. Like I think an offensive lineman is more valuable in the draft because those don't come up in free agency. You can find receivers in free agency and later on in the draft.
right. Can we go back to Miles for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think it was the money or the vision that kept him in Cleveland?
Oh, 100% the money. It ain't the
Yeah.
vision. I don't even know if the Browns have a vision and they know what they're doing at number two. I mean, I
When
think,
when they told, because Miles posted that he had that press the other day, the presser
yeah,
the other day, where he
yeah.
said that he knows what the quarterback situation is going to be, and he's excited about it. In theory, that it can't mean Russ, right? He would he be excited about Russ coming to the Browns? No,
It has to mean Shador, right?
it has to mean either Sanders, but something tells me it could mean Rodgers. But I don't think the Browns even have any inkling of going after Rodgers.
No.
But uh, I don't know, man. Like it's such an unfortunate situation that we're the number two in this year's draft, and it's like maybe karma has a factor though. Like we've been number one, two, three, four, five in so many drafts where there's been, generational QBs, and the Browns just miss. So maybe what it'll take is a bad draft for the Browns to hit. I don't know. I mean, they've been historically one of the worst drafting teams. Andrew Berry has been fantastic at getting players that are veterans, trading for finding value. I mean, the moves he made with Amari Cooper were fantastic. He got the
Yeah,
best out of him and then moved him at the right time. The Odell thing, that was Dorsey though. That wasn't
yeah.
Berry. But his track record drafting is like it's just man, like I don't trust him at all. And also I hate this money scheme we have going in LA with what's his name? Our computer guy, our analytics guy that lives out in California.
Di Podesta.
Dude, I don't get that whole thing. I don't know how much play he has in the draft but the drafting we thought was going to be good from Barry, and it just has not been. It's been subpar. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. When it comes to this draft, I don't think you can go wrong with Carter or Sanders at the two spot. I kind of part of me really would like to see Sanders come because of how much he wants to be here, supposedly. Um, so I don't know. I don't know.
Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. while you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon's World podcast right here on YouTube.